All right. Welcome, everyone. I will call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, November 12th, and the time is 7:02 p.m. Melissa, will you please take roll call?
Richard Poor, Denise Meyer, Andy Cabarrus,
Here.
Carl Hubner, Melissa Denton. And for the record, the Pinkerton Student School Board member, Eliana Henry, will not attendance tonight. She has a prior commitment. And associated at the board table is Superintendent Bompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
All right. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Board members, in your packets, you will see meeting minutes for our regular October 28th meeting. So go ahead and look those over. And I'll be looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Any questions or discussion? All approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to public comment. Melissa, has anyone come forward?
Yes, Chairman, we had one person come forward. I believe you have her sheet there tonight, Ms. Price.
And if you could please state your full name and your address, that would be great.
Sure. Lisa Price, 332 West Road, Hampstead.
Great.
I'm speaking tonight because I have some concerns regarding transparency and communication to the public. I try to stay informed and I do ask questions. The latest concern truly magnified with the hiring practice that was done for the assistant principal at HMS. But first up tonight, though, is the taxpayers spoke and voted for a default budget. To me, this indicated that there would need to be cut to the budget and adding items to the budget. So it came as a great surprise that the district added additional rental units in the building where the AU resides. The general public does not want added expenses of monthly rent, utilities, and if the space warranted based on how good the schools are configuring classrooms and utilize every inch of their buildings, I'm wondering why there couldn't be a consolidation or a reconfiguration of space in the actual already rented SA office. Also, with scouring 26-27 proposed budget, it seems there's a lot of expense associated, including professional development and certification verification, etc., in hiring an administrator with no New Hampshire certification. I've been getting right-to-know requests, and thank you for providing the information. I do have a right-to-know request that I have not gotten an acknowledgement of an email reset of as of yet, but tomorrow is day 5. To go back to the AP hearing, I have also been researching and contacting both the Department of Education and New Hampshire and Mass to get clarification and understanding on items and what is public information. This evening, I will be sending out a more detailed no request, but I want to highlight some of the information that I'm requesting regarding the records relating to the district hearing of the assistant principal. I'll be looking for a certification of eligibility issued by the State of New Hampshire Department of Education, copy of individualized professional development plan, copy of employment contract application, resume, correspondence with the Department of Education related to the authorization of certificate, and documentation of the hiring process and procedures that we have for the assistant principal. Thank you, and I look for a reply.
Right. Moving on to current business with a technology update from Joe Dye. Oh, I'm sorry, I went out of order. My bad. We are moving to HMS highlight with Principal Amy Bernard. Let's start that.
Good evening. I'd like to invite student council members, 8th graders Maddie Dreher and Riley Devine, to give the HMS school updates.
On November 7th, Hampstead Middle School paid tribute to our community's veterans with a heartfelt Veterans Day assembly, followed breakfast in their honor. These featured inspiring speeches delivered by our 8th grade students, musical performances by both our band and chorus, and engaging address from our guest speaker, Colonel Howie Steadman. The progress concluded with a powerful school-wide sing-along of God Bless USA by Lee Green, a moment that moved everyone in attendance. Following the assembly, our honors were welcomed to the cafeteria for homemade breakfast prepared and served by members of our student council, National Junior Honor Society. It was a meaningful and memorable day, one that reminded our students and staff of the important service, gratitude, and community. We are incredibly proud of our students and staff in their efforts in creating such a special event to honor those who served our country. The Patriots Pen finalists were announced and are moving on to the school district competition. Congrats to Maddie D, Emily D, Avery B, Anna V, and A.L.
Math team at HMS. This year, Hampstead Middle School is reinstating their competitive math teams. Math specialist Ms. Shaw as the students will be able to compete in other schools in the United States or against other local schools. Students in grades 6 and 7 have the opportunity to participate in the Continental Math League, a virtual competition league that has schools all over the country compete against each other. During weekly practices, students will they will participate in a meet. Each competition, the league sends out printouts of where each school placed. Students in grade 8 have the opportunity to participate in a brand new local competition league. With the help of the math specialists and teachers at HMS Secondary, Timberland, Sim, as well as a couple of Plymouth State students, a 4-school league is being created. This league will have 5 or 6 in math competitions starting week November 13th after school at the Hampstead School. These competitions will consist of 6 different math tests in lanes of the number system, expressions and equations, functions, geometry, statistics, and probability, and a team challenge.
5th grade class is excited to take part in the Global Read, a special project that connects classrooms around the world through a shared reading experience, taking place each fall. This year, we're partnering with a class in New Zealand, and it has been our best year yet. We have a fabulous team of teachers, Miss Bonell, Miss Connors, Miss Jackson, and Miss Sudd, working together to incorporate our curriculum with this 6-week program. The goal is that schools, class, and classrooms connect while reading this book across states, regions, the globe. We are thrilled to have a strong connection to a class in New Zealand. Our New Zealand class has sent us a Where in the World video. Many fifth graders choose to miss recess for weeks in order to be a part of Where in the World video. With our clue, we are hoping that they will be able to figure out where in the world HMS is located. This program has taken place over 8 years and has included multiple other connections across North America. We also raised funds to build wells in South Sudan after hosting guest speaker Peter Niani.
Some upcomings to look forward to are our first awards, which is right before Thanksgiving. Winter sports tryouts have begun, and we are at the beginning of winter sports season. The Student Council has been working on their annual toy and food drive, which takes place in December. Last but not least, we have the band and chorus winter concert coming up in December.
Thank you. Any questions here, my friends?
No questions. I'll just say I really appreciate you all getting up and speaking. As always, not an easy thing to do in front of everyone, so thank you all for being. I'll just say, as in terms of our district as a whole, I just appreciate how we highlight the veterans in our town. I think that's really important, so awesome job there. Math Week sounds really exciting.
Starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm excited to get some updates on how that's going. Board members, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. All right. Now, moving on to the technology update with Joe Dion.
Good evening, School Board. Before I begin, I would like to just take a quick moment to apologize to the people watching remotely. We are having a little bit of a technical sound issue. It's choppy, and it's very hard to troubleshoot while we were doing this live, but I will be looking into it and resolving it in the future, so my apologies. Recently, we went through the state reporting, beginning of year submissions on the new ALMA index system. This is the first year that we've completed a certified submission on the new system for the beginning of the year. These submissions consist of the enrollment, summer graduate and withdrawal, student absence, program participation, which is the students on 504s, and that was done October 27th. We worked closely with Student Services to obtain data on 504 data and also the out-of-district students that our district are responsible for. Next, I'm going to talk about the Cybersecurity Summit of 2025. Myself and members of the SAU Business Office attended the Cybersecurity Summit hosted by Primex in Tilton last Thursday. Some of the attended sessions include the neighboring school district breach. Members of Primex, the Atom Group, and the neighboring school district in question reviewed the timeline of the attack and the aftermath. They reviewed the communication to the community and how that was done. They discussed submitting a claim with Primex and following their district's incident response plan. They reviewed what the school day would look like with access to technology for an extended period of time. It was important information. There were also numerous panels around hardening physical and data security and overall cybersecurity preparedness. We are going to begin to roll out automatic attendance calling. Beginning this week, we'll begin our automation of our absent calls home, utilizing our school message system. Any student that does not have a verified absence will get a call home with an automated message to call the school and verify the absence. The front office staff at school will also be emailed a report of the statuses of calls and see if the household answered the call or not. This will greatly reduce the calls our office staff have to make each day. I'm also going to talk about the K-12 Cybersecurity in a Box grant, which I believe we have mentioned before. This is provided by the Overwatch Foundation. We have applied and are in the process of reviewing and accepting the contract for phase 1 of this grant, which provides 3 years of CrowdStrike Falcon Complete licensing for Hive targets and workstations and servers. What that is, CrowdStrike Falcon Complete is a managed detection and response service that combines endpoint security with a dedicated team of security analysts. It provides 24/7 monitoring, including threats, hunting, and hands-on remediation. The Overwatch Foundation's goal is to rapidly deploy CrowdStrike licenses across SAUs in New Hampshire to strengthen statewide protection, aiming to have it implemented in as many SAUs as possible. We have also applied for phase 2, which is hopefully going to provide 3 years of firewall hardware and licensing for our district. That concludes my update. Any questions?
Out of curiosity, for the software that you're using for those automated calls, was that an add-on to some software platform that we already have?
No, it's just a feature that we were not utilizing.
Okay.
And I was actually not aware that we were not utilizing it. I had some communication with the front offices, and they told me a need that they had, and I researched it a little bit, and we decided that it was available, and we rolled it out.
Okay.
We are in the process of rolling it out.
So it was something that we owned the entire time and
Mm-hmm.
just weren't utilizing?
We own the product the entire time. The feature has to be configured with an outside rep, but it's at no additional cost to us.
Cool. Great. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the student achievement data presentation with Nicole Tomaselli. Hi.
Good evening. Joe's going to project the Canva. And this presentation will be available on our district website as soon as I'm done sharing it with the school board this evening. So in Hampstead, we're a K-8 district. We do a series of assessments to provide data around our instruction, and this data is used by our teachers and teams to make informed decisions. We do 2 types of assessments. Several types of assessments. They're either normative or criterion-based, which I'll talk a little bit about in a few slides. We analyze our diagnostic information in the fall during our MTSS meetings, and we use that information to place students in intervention groups and determine what the trends are in grade levels. All of this is part of state law RSA 193C and the federal law Every Student Succeeds Act. And I'm sorry, I forgot to read that other bullet. We try to triangulate our data in Hampstead. We do have New Hampshire SAS. All districts in New Hampshire have access to the state summative, which is only one data point, the SAS summative. We purchase iReady as a district so that we have diagnostic and also mid-year data. And then we also utilize classroom assessments, some other locally given assessments, and Acadience in the younger grades, along with teacher feedback. This pyramid shows our 3 tiers of instruction. You hear us talk a lot about MTSS and the multiple tiered systems of support. So tier 1 is like the base of the triangle. It is the instruction that all students receive in a classroom setting. Tier 2 are smaller groups with specific skill sets that they're working on. That's where we do our targeted instruction. That's where we do a lot of reteaching. There's no new instruction in tier 2. Some schools call it a win block. At Central, we call it a win block. At the middle school, we call it flex. And then we have tier 3. That is it should be our smallest population, a very intense, specialized, specially designed instruction. You'll hear Melissa McDonald talk about SDI, specially designed instruction, that is intended to meet students' goals that are written in their IEPs. When we have tier 3, we usually are implementing some type of alternative curriculum or offering progress monitoring home to families so that they can see the student making growth. First up, I want to talk about SAS. This is our New Hampshire State Assessment System. It's given to all students in grades 3 through 8 for ELA and math, so that's English Language Arts. It consists of reading and writing and math. In grades 5 through 8, we participate in SAS, which is a science test. Students with significant disabilities have the, I don't want to say option, but the better path for them is called a dynamic learning map. And we do have very few students that are that's a good option for them, but we do have some that take it. And then the WITA access test is the state reporting system for students who are testing for English language proficiency. Hampstead always seems to get picked for NAEP. It's the National Assessment of Educational Progress. I think we provide them with a nice sample size. This year, our 8th graders were selected, but our 4th graders were not. So I'll share information about that too. So these are our 3 kind of testing windows. In the fall, we do Acadience, which is DIBELS is the product under the umbrella of Acadience. We do iReady Math and iReady ELA. In the winter, students at the middle school who still require the DIBELS will get it. At Central School, everyone gets it. We can add to that list the WITA ESOL test, as well as this year, the NAEP test will be on January 27th. That is a subset of our 8th graders. We're required to roster everyone, and then they randomly pick, I believe it's 50 students. And then in the spring, this is where the testing kind of starts to stack up. We also have science in there for 5th and 8th grade in the spring. So let's get to our data. On this slide, we're going to talk about English Language Arts first. I have pulled this information from iExplore, which is available to the public. The light blue bar on the left graph shows Hampstead Central School over the past 5 years. The gray bar shows Hampstead Middle School over the past 5 years, and then the green line shows the New Hampshire state average. So you can see a little bit of a concerning, to me it's a concerning drop at Central School. It's a slight drop, but it is nevertheless concerning, and a very slight drop at the middle school. When we break down the percentages by grade level, you can really see that we have, and keep in mind this is from last spring, so these students have moved on to a different grade now, but our 3rd graders last spring performed below the state average, which is very concerning to me, but I don't think that that's anything that we are not, it's not new information to our teams. We are concerned about their skills, and particularly in the area of decoding, we've heard a lot from our reading specialist, and we reflected that in our staffing changes for the year to help address some of their remedial skill deficiencies. And I can come back to questions at the end of the presentation if you'd like. So this slide has a lot of information on it. I know Carl had asked a question earlier in a board meeting this year about growth, so I put on the bottom right assessment growth by grade over time. This information is all available on the iAchieve site of iPlatform. It shows proficiency over time versus growth over time. So that's an important distinction. Growth talks about a particular cohort. So when you read these charts, you want to read diagonally from the top left to the, towards the bottom right to follow the cohort of children over time. The bars on the left also have these same numbers, just in a more graphical representation. And then the red line that's horizontal shows the state average this year. So we do have some grade levels that are below state average this year. Again, it's nothing that our teams are not aware of, but it is concerning to us. And then we also have some teams and some grade levels that are very high performing. So that's ELA. This is the slide that shows surrounding districts in South Central. I like to kind of see how we're doing relative to other towns. You can see we are the purple bar in 2025 for Hampstead, our proficiency rating as a district, and keep in mind this is SAS, so this is only grades 3 through 8. Our percentage proficiency is 57%, just above the state average, and I do think we have, some work to do here. We should certainly, I think, be performing a little bit higher with our ELA proficiency, but I do think we've identified some pockets that have affected that average in last spring at least. And we have taken some steps to remediate and give those students what they need to grow. Okay, math. And I don't know if we should take questions now about ELA or should I just keep going? Keep going. Okay, math. So this slide, again from iExplore, shows the state average in green. The light blue is central school. The grayish color is the middle school. And you can see in math, we are really outperforming the state average. And even though we have showing a decline at central school, we are still performing very well. When you look at the grade level bars on the right-hand side, you can see exactly where we need to make some improvements in our math instruction. And keep in mind, this was last spring, so we have made some staffing changes and moved people around. We've also partnered with some organizations to bring more math training in, like OGAP, and we have adopted, finally, an evidence-based aligned curriculum, which makes me really happy. We have Eureka Squared at Central School, and now we have Ready Math at the middle school. So our resources will be covering all of the standards, and we'll be making sure that we hit the standards that we haven't hit in the past with those new tools. Okay, this slide, again, a lot of information here from iAchieve, which is publicly available. It shows proficiency on the top, growth on the bottom, and then on the left, a graphical representation of proficiency. And you can see how we've made some really nice gains in the past few years with regard to math. In some of our, I would say particularly at the middle school, in some of our 5th through 8th grade, we've made some big jumps. And I think a lot of this is due to an effective PLC model. We've been doing a lot of professional learning together, and now we have better resources. So we are making some gains. I do see the decline, and you'll see a decline in 3rd grade and again in 5th. And I would keep in mind that last year was a pilot year for a new math program, so some of our students, as many as 25% of students in some grades, saw 2 different math programs last year. So once we kind of even out with everyone getting the same curriculum, I think we'll have a better data sample for next spring. It is quite varied in math. Okay, and this is how our math scores stack up against local districts. You can see the state average is right at around 42%, and Hampstead is at 51% on average, grades 3 through 8. So that is how we're doing with math. There's an interesting story and a lot to learn about what's going on in Chester. You can see they're having quite a successful run, and I have been talking to their Christine is their superintendent, but also their curriculum person in Chester, and she's got some amazing tools and resources she's been sharing, and so I'm excited to learn from her and see how they're making that growth. And then lastly, we have our science scores, and our science scores have actually increased significantly in 8th grade last year, which was exciting, although we did take a slight dip in 5th grade. And I would just note that this scale is, that tops out at 60 and not at 100. So even though it looks like a substantial drop or raise, it's really only a handful of points. Of note, there has been a lot of discussion around SAS Science at the state recently, and they have decided that in 11th grade they are no longer going to teach or test rather Earth and space science. They are going to focus more on life science. So there are no changes yet in the 5th or 8th grade test, but we might see that in the future. I'm staying in touch with the state on science testing. Okay, so we just looked at SAS. It's important to note that SAS is a norm-referenced test. So on the slide on the right, you can see what a norm-referenced test is. That is when we measure students against other students. For a lot of reasons, norm reference makes, sense, but it also makes people uncomfortable because we're not measuring students against the standard or the criteria. So criterion reference test is what we get from iReady and from Acadience, and that data is a little bit different. And I can move through these slides a little bit quickly if you'd like, or we can spend a lot of time. I'll show reading first. So this is our triangle for reading in the fall. This is measuring students K through 8 now, and you can see the areas in the green represent kids who are on or above grade level. Kids who are in the yellow are at, we would say, the ready to learn stage, or potentially 1 grade level below, and then red is more at risk, 2 or 3 grade levels below. And you can see we do have some areas of concern where there is a pretty decent chunk of red in reading. And you can see on the top right-hand side the domains represented, and I know the writing is very small, but again, this slideshow will be available on the website in just a few minutes for anyone that wants to look more closely. Okay. These slides show how our performance on iReady has changed over the past few years in each grade. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but what we're looking for is, any kind of pattern that would indicate an area of improvement. So our kindergartners, as you can see, they're not coming in 2 and 3 grade levels below. And we do talk as a team whether iReady is the best assessment for kindergarten, but we want our kindergartners in front of this test, so just to get them used to the platform. So we use other measures in kindergarten as well to really dive into what they need. But then you can see grades 1 through 5 on this slide. Go ahead. And then the upper grades on this slide for reading. And these are fall to fall scores. And we do fall testing early in mid-September. Okay. This slide is really interesting to me. This is how Hampstead compares to New Hampshire and then to national norms. iReady samples millions of students across the country. And you can see how Hampstead on the far right, where it says district, performs against the other iReady districts in the state, which it's not a mandatory test in any way, but a lot of New Hampshire students use it. And then I believe it says there are 41,000 students in New Hampshire that use iReady, and then nationally there's close to 10 million that use iReady. And then here's how we compare. Okay, yeah, this is how we compare to those national benchmarks. So I'm going to skip through this. This is grade by grade, so Joe, you can advance this slide. That gives a more detailed breakdown of how each grade level compares nationally. Keep going. One more. Okay, and then here's our math iReady scores from this past fall. We tested 781 students. We have quite a few. In the red, you can see our little triangle on the left. We have many, probably about half, about 55% at tier 2, and then we have about 26% right now in the green. This is our relative placements from fall to fall. And you can see this slide shows our 3-year pass with iReady and some areas of growth that we've made. Going. And then this shows our grade level distributions of those changes across K through 5. And while we have some areas that show incredible growth. We also have some concerns about students that are 2 and 3 grade levels below and meeting their needs. So this is the data that we look at in teams, and then we whittle it down to the actual domains and the WIN groups that are needed. And again, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Okay. So I like to throw this slide in always at the end because there are so many ways that our children learn and grow, and, it doesn't always boil down to a single data point. Hampstead, we really pride ourselves on many of the things we do well on the right side of this slide, and there's, so many of these other soft skills that are listed in the graphic on the left that, we don't quantify and measure, but we know our children are doing well. And we're continually trying to improve their learning experience. So I'm happy to answer any data-related questions that you might have. I know Carl's going to have.
So when you look at iReady, right, yellow is 1 grade level behind. However, if you're testing 5th grade at the beginning of 5th grade, they would be 1 level behind because you're measuring what they would be at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So really,
It's an adaptive test, so I don't believe they give end of 5th grade content, but the yellow isn't overly concerning.
Yeah.
Yellow means they're ready to learn,
yeah.
where green means they already are demonstrating some level of mastery over that content.
So it's more, so looking at the beginning of the year, you're looking more at the red, especially because you have learning loss over the course of the summer.
Yes, and the dyslexia law requires us to use screeners that are evidence-based. So with the kids in the red, we will screen them again, and then if they still flag as a potential low score, their parents will get a letter and they get services from a reading specialist in K through 3, and next year that law will extend through grade 5.
So I appreciate the growth stats because when I looked at that, when you look at, there's 8 cohorts or 4 cohorts, 2021, 2019, and when you looked at their growth over multiple grades, 5 of the 8 were even, 2 were up, and only 1 was down. So for me, growth's the important stat, right? Because it's how much are they learning each individual year, and I know this would be a big pain in the tuchus, but when you do the iReady, you probably have to Photoshop it, but if you can put a cohort where you look the first
it is
grade,
tricky, yes.
each individual year, and you put it up, you
Follow
can
it,
show 8th grade, look at what in the fall each year they were doing, so then you can see side by side if the red is going up or down and the green is going, that kind of thing. I think that would be, it's easier to look over the course of time. I think that would be more impactful versus the full one.
I agree. To follow the cohort, it's hard in iReady to do that, but I think that's what I've done in the past. It did require a lot of copying and pasting, but we follow the group of children years.
Yeah. Because, for me, for that, you're always comparing it to previous years, but for example, it looks like Central School went down, but we don't necessarily know if Central School went down because we're not really measuring Central School, we're measuring the 5th grade class that just left versus the kindergarten class that came in, because that's the offset between the two. Right. But if you look at cohorts, I think it'll be easier to understand. That's where I look where I may be more worried about. So.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to share it with you. It's a Canva, and what's kind of neat about the graphs in Canva is if you hover over any of these bars, it will kind of fade everything else in the background out so that you can really see the data kind of one column at a time if that's how you want to look at it.
And we'll also put the presentation on the website in the next district communication. I'll put a link in there to that as well so that folks will have it. And last year's presentation is
It's still there,
still
last
on.
year's, yeah. Yep.
We still have the end of the year scores.
No, we really,
The end of the year iReady, because I'd like to look at the end of the year and see the growth they made.
A spring to
Yeah.
fall? I can run that.
yeah,
And
no, we didn't
sometimes
have
we
a
don't do an-
presentation on data at the end of the year. And
No,
part of
we
it is
don't
the
get
SAS results aren't, even some of the SAS data is like still embargoed. We had to vet this through the Department of Ed to make sure that we were sharing information that was not going to get us in trouble. And, but we can certainly do that. And a little later, when we talk about budget, we're talking about the summer reading intervention program. To address what Dr. Hubner was talking about, it is concerning when Nicole and I got to sit through some of the data meetings and to see the summer slide with some of our kids. And our teachers are really talented in getting kids caught up quick, but when you're a struggling reader to begin with, it takes a lot longer to do that, and we need to intervene, and it's reflected in the budget that you're going to see in a few minutes.
We also did, for what it's worth, we did instructional rounds actually this morning on calibration of our evaluation, and knowing that, I was making this presentation, we've decided to focus on literacy at Central this morning, and we'll be focusing on math at the middle school in a few weeks, just to make sure that our administrators are kind of attuned with what should good literacy instruction look like, how is it differentiated, what are the resources they're using, to see how all these things play out. Many of our teachers have participated in LETTERS, which is a framework training that the state offered, but now we really need to figure out who our master LETTERS kind of trainers are and make sure that that's filtering down into all of the classrooms. So that's an area of focus for our ELA vertical team, and one of our goals for the year is to develop a better literacy plan that offers more instructional coherence among the tiers. But it's a challenge. We have children that are struggling to read, and so we're trying to budget for that, get the right resources, get the right time in the schedule. The Central School has an amazing literacy block and an intervention block, and so we're trying to get all the right pieces there to help them get what they need. Are there any other questions?
So I said in that period of time where we had the pilot curriculums that impacted the scores, I guess my concern there is down the road, we don't plan on piloting any new curriculums anytime soon.
No, we purchased a 3-year agreement with Eureka and Ready Math, and I believe the heaviest lift has been done. We would have probably gone with a 6-year agreement if we were in a better budget situation. So that's why sometimes our curriculum line is pretty high, because we buy a 6-year agreement. We have to pay for it all in 1 year, which unfortunately the companies won't let you pay year to year. But I think the heaviest lift was for our math committee to really kick the tires on a handful of products. We tried to carefully select the units that we piloted. We don't want to pilot like the first unit of the program. It's kind of last year's material. It's kind of warm up for the school year. So our teachers, particularly the middle school, really wanted to, get into the units that were a little bit more challenging. Ratios comes to mind, was one they really wanted to see how the different programs addressed teaching ratios. Estimation is a thing at Central School. It's much harder to teach estimation than one would expect. And so really seeing the different programs and how they approach some of the known challenging topics was important. But having done that, we recognized that the scope and sequence kind of got out of alignment for at least one class in every grade. And at the middle school, at least one section and sometimes multiple sections in every grade. So hopefully, and we had a similar situation with ELA a few years ago when we piloted Wonders and I think it was My Amplify or a few other programs. We just know that there's some inconsistency for those children who are in the pilot.
Spiraling where they're going to cover the previous stuff again later, so that even if they weren't able to cover it, they'll be able to cover it again in depth more.
Yeah, I don't know if they call it a spiral. A spiral has a little bit of a negative residual impact from other math programs in the past, but they do have prerequisite skill reports, and then they also have MyPath that goes back and fills those in. So it's very known with Curriculum Associates tools where those gaps are, and we have MyPath seats for children who are showing regression and need those skills.
Okay, so there's like a tier 1 intervention with MyPath, and then a tier 2 if you do need to do more with Flex and that sort of stuff. So you do have targeted ability to bring those kids back up that may have fallen behind.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of curiosity questions.
Sure.
One is, obviously from the charts there, you're seeing that Wyndham is ahead of everyone.
Oh, yes.
Have you, which I know has been a while in the making, have you discussed with them what they're doing differently and how they're maintaining it? Because it seems to be a consistent year
Year
over
after
year
year.
It is.
trending
Yeah.
with that group.
I would say, and we've talked about this, I am in touch with the Wyndham curriculum people. I will note that there's probably 5 of them. They have multiple layers of administration overseeing each kind of department at each grade level. Granted, they are a bigger district, so there are more students. I think Wyndham has really great systems in place, and they have a lot of highly trained interventionists. So we've done an analysis in the past on how many interventionists are available during a WIN block. Wyndham has many available, and they're all master's degree plus. So it's not a position that you would ever start in. These people have 25 years teaching experience, and they get into a WIN teaching situation. I don't know if you want to add anything, Bob?
It's interesting because that was the question that Nicole and I discussed when prepping for this evening. And, everything that Nicole said is true. The other thing, we know the single greatest factor in the achievement of a student is the college education or the education of their parents. And Wyndham has very highly educated residents, a workforce. They're a bedroom town for communities. It's not to say that Hampstead doesn't as well, but if you look at a proportion of their population, so that impacts it. The other thing that Wyndham has that Nicole alluded to is they were a real early adopter of MTSS. They're a few years ahead of us, and the research would say that it takes a few years to really put the wind in your sails. And the same was true with RTI. Wyndham was one of the early adopters. In fact, our Director of Student Services was one of the people who helped implement that program in Wyndham. So it's a very good question, and we have a good relationship with a lot of the South Central districts to be able to say, hey, what are you doing over there? That seems to be working, and the answer varies. So.
Sounds like individualized attention and more care, both on the parent side and the school with the dedicated professionals.
Yeah, there's no question that academic focus is very, very strong there. And sometimes that's great for kids and they respond well to that, and sometimes that pressure is not great for kids. So it's nice to have great scores, but I am concerned about the whole child, so it's a balance.
Yeah, no, totally get that. I've got 2 kids of my own. The other curiosity question that I had was kind of related tangentially to what Carl said about cohorts. I am curious about our deployment of technology in the classrooms, in particular with every child having a Chromebook, and how that might correlate to how kids are learning, how they're processing the information. There's a lot to be said from the hand-mind connection, so not writing as much, not writing out essays, doing math problems, doing that on a screen, and how the brain is kind of processing that information. So again, curiosity question on my part in terms of heavy tech load against the learning.
Yeah, I do. I love that question. So it's interesting. One of the book studies that the Math PLC read at the middle school is called Building Thinking Classrooms. It's Peter, I'm going to say Lil Jahome. I don't know. It's a very long Swedish name, but everybody knows Peter L. And he really talks a lot about getting kids into groups, getting them doing their thinking vertically on whiteboards, not horizontally with paper. So that is a challenge I've put to our middle school math teachers, is I really want to see the kids working vertically on whiteboards, both for, and the growth really comes from their feeling safe to take risks. Somehow when you put it on a paper and you submit it, it doesn't feel like okay to take a risk and really go for it with what your math thinking is. You want to make sure you get it right. Whereas on a whiteboard, there's a lot of ways to show your math strategies, and it's a low stakes environment. I can easily erase it. It's not permanent. I'm not passing it in. So those are the types of learning environments we want to get to. I do believe at Central School with Eureka, you will see that unfold in the next few years. There's a lot of manipulatives. There's a lot of time to talk math and do math tasks. It's definitely a learning curve for our teachers. It is not about just getting the right answer. It is about how you are getting there and showing them many, many ways we can get to that answer. So we talk a little bit about depth of knowledge, which is how do we get the kids to show what they know, even when they get the right answer. Show me 4 or 5 different ways you can get there. That's essential, and I think we'll see that. I completely agree with what you're saying. I don't want everything digitally learned, and there's a lot lost, which is why, we have so many unique UAs. We have so many experiences for children. I think our teachers in the community here value all of that learning, and it's not really just about math and reading. It's nice to have wonderful test scores, but our kids are capable of producing so many amazing other things as well. So you don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, I appreciate it.
And I would just add too, I think it was last year, I had a conversation with a community member about the one deployment and student achievement, and they had pointed me to a study that said the increase in student achievement with 101 Chromebooks is nominal at best, which I think is interesting. And I think what that says to me is not that we shouldn't have one-to-one, but they're tools, one of many tools. And there are a grave number of concerns about students accessing too much screen time. And so I think if you approach it, the Chromebook is a tool just like a pencil. And we wouldn't necessarily try to create an argument that a pencil increases student achievement, but as a tool, it helps to support it.
Board members, any other questions or comments for Nicole? Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to the 26-27 proposed budget presentation with Bob Thompson.
All right, good evening. I just want to start with a caveat. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so if I start to have a coughing fit, Mr. Dowd knows that he's on tabs to take over the presentation. So tonight is another milestone in our budget process. Tonight we present the full and total proposed operating budget. And again, the hundreds of hours of work that have gone into the development of this, from our classroom teachers to our building administrators to our district folks to the business office. There are many hands and a lot of fingerprints on our operating budget. And for those of you who are at home, if you go to the website, there's on the right hand side, there's budget information, all of the documents that we discussed tonight, including the presentation, are there. And if there's information that you're looking for, you don't find it there, let us know, and we'll continue to update the website. And this is great for those who would like to take a real deep dive and look at how every nickel is spent. This is the place to go. Also, as I indicated at the last meeting, we've created a Google form where you can submit questions, feedback, and we have a Q&A document that we're going to continue to update when we start to hear the same question twice. We know that it's on people's minds and we need to share that. So overarching goals, and we've talked about these several times. So there really are 4 goals that we adhere to in the budget process. One, we want to ensure that the operating budget that we present to the board shows a commitment to our values and our priorities. This is how we walk the walk, so to speak, that the budget is an articulation of our vision and of our mission. And so when we approach budgeting, we constantly have our values and our priorities in mind. And of course, that's about the child in the chair and putting the needs of students first. We also want to ensure that we're keeping our facilities in good working order. We also want to ensure that we have robust technology systems that support and strengthen instructional and operational capabilities. And then finally, be good financial stewards of the Hampstead taxpayers. The budget that you see in front of you is not the budget that we started with. There were additional requests that were made, and our job at every level is to separate needs from wants, to create priorities. In some cases, have conversations with people to say, not this year, we know it's important. I have included a slide later on of some of the things that didn't make the cut, and that would be a good opportunity for the board to have a conversation to see how we might want to prioritize some of those items.
And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dowd, who's going to give some additional information.
So our total proposed budget for 26-27 is $39,926,283. Current year voted budget is $38,234,315 for an increase of $1,691,968, or 4.43% increase. I think it's important to note that we have not, while we've put the budget together, we have not done our final review of our placements. We have not received our final increase for Pinkerton, and we typically go through and do a few other scrubs as well through the budget. So we're at 4.43. That's higher than I think we'd like to be, but I'm not thinking that we're going to be there by the time we're done with all of those scrubs and all of those final reviews before we present the final budget, most likely at our next meeting. So I've provided a pie chart of really how and where our budget expenditures are and where they lie. And so you can see that salaries and benefits are 51%. Salaries are 34.03%. Benefits are 21.13%. So our budget itself is well over half, probably close to 60% at the end of the day. Salaries and benefits. Expenses themselves are 6.22%, which are just other expenses. Our tuition is 26.3%. We have some fund transfers, which are funding for food service, and our grants fund, as well as transportation, which is 6.59% of the total budget. Utilities and repairs, 1.85%, and supplies and equipment, 1.29%. So I hope that's able to, you're able to visualize a bit of what our budget is comprised of. So the drivers behind our budget are salaries, always a big one, and so that's a $588,000 change, or 4.53% compared to last year. Group insurance is $244,703, higher than last year, 4.62%. Social Security, which just ties with wages, $47,560. Employee retirement, $29,357, showing a 12.49%. That's not due to any increase in rates. Rates have been the same. So as we finalize that budget, that number is one that may be readjusted to better reflect or properly reflect the final numbers that we're looking at. Teacher retirement, $81,185, 4.6% increase. Other employee benefits, $53,371, it's a 34% increase. That line consists of fees for servicing our flex spending accounts, as well as any annuity matches that we have. Professional services are up $71,452, or 6.83%. Transportation, $349,596, or 15.32% for last year. That is largely due to on the special education side, the special transportation side, that really relates more to us being able to properly budget what we've been playing catch up with over the past few years. So that's a much better number than we've had in the past. We tend to go over that number routinely, and I think that this, in our student services department, I think Melissa is over there, Ms. McDonald has really done a great job trying to articulate what the needs are, and that will match those needs. Tuition so far is at $182,369. That's both the regular education and special education tuitions. Our Pinkerton tuition increase is currently at 6%. We are waiting on a final update. Travel workshops, that's the 580 account, that's down $41,158. And I think that really largely has to do with the certain curriculum initiatives that we had, and we had put them through in the workshops for training and that sort of thing. Supplies, 610 is up $39,548, or 15.34%. Books and info resources up $19,000, or 9.19%. Software up $15,805, for a 10.82% increase. Repairs, utilities, and other miscellaneous of $168,000, or 21%. And fund transfers, $930, down $150,000, or 12.65%. All other really comprised of anything remaining is $5,644. The number is so small I didn't attach a percentage to it because it would just be something crazy. So
and
we
if we,
go ahead, sorry, Bob.
I was going to say, if we look at, we move to enrollment, And this information was presented at the last meeting, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I will note that I did work with the building principals to include average class size for next year. And I just want to highlight with pre-K, it says 12 to 15, so there's a limited number of spots. We don't have universal pre-K. And as the year progresses and children age into eligibility of the program, the numbers will increase by cap at 15. And same with kindergarten as well. We don't offer universal kindergarten, and we have a school board policy that says no more than 18 students. But for next year, you can see our numbers for first grade through fourth grade, with the average class size being 19.3 at the central school. If we advance next slide, for HMS, you can see we have a little bit of a range here. There's a smaller class in the 8th grade. The average class size would be 17, and again, consistent with the central school, we have 19.2 students. And again, we don't have any .2 students, so you'll have classes that are either 19 or 20, depending. It is important to note that that's average class size, and that also is what we call like the core academic program. It would not be uncommon to have a physical education class or a band class that the numbers can deviate from that average, so it's not included in that average. So district overall enrollment, we're projecting a total of 1,186. These are based on our current numbers, and we'll talk a little bit about NESDEC in a minute. And that also includes our Pinkerton students who we're responsible for, and we're projecting an increase in students for next year of to a total of 369. And if we move on, I included this year just a little bit of historical enrollment data. Again, we utilize a nonprofit agency called the New England School Development Council. Their sort of bread and butter is enrollment reports for school districts. Most school districts contract with them. And I thought the historical enrollment would be important. You can see that we go back to the year 2015, 2016. There were significantly more students in the district. This follows a trend that we've seen throughout all of New Hampshire, which is declining enrollment in an aging population. What you will see when we look at the projected enrollment is, and this is where we're a little unique because a lot of towns continue to see a decrease in enrollment, and we're not. We're going to see an increase. I will fully admit that that increase it's subtle, but still, if you look at where we are versus where we're headed, there's the potential that we could pick up 60 or more students. And this is actually an adjustment. If you looked at last year's number, the 10-year projected enrollment was much higher, it was around 1,300. And then, Mr. Dowd, do you want to talk about Pinkerton tuition?
Thank you. So right now we are estimating, or we've been told that we should look at estimates between 4, 5, 6%, 8% was their initial. So I'm budgeting right now at 8%, which brings us to tuition this year, for next year, 18 to 60 per student. We have a very large class going from 8th grade to high school. So you can see that our numbers will be up, estimated by about 30 additional students. And that would make sense with what you just saw, I believe, on the district enrollment slide. Just an odd cohort, and so we're looking at a much higher population going to Pinkerton. So, Joe?
So just quick, Jeff, so it's about a $900,000 increase in tuition for Pinkerton?
Not necessarily. Theoretically, yes, but we budgeted for greater students, so we're showing the actual number of students at 339.
Yep.
We budgeted higher than that.
Okay.
We budgeted more students than that to go. Probably about 357, I believe, was our final number.
Okay.
And what is challenging is, so first of all, Pinkerton should set their actual tuition rate the end of November. We anticipate the next time we come back, we'll have hard numbers for you. So right now we're operating off of the range they gave us. There's another factor here. Their budget may increase between 4 and 6%, but the per pupil tuition is divided up amongst the total number of students that attend. And so not only do we have a 4 to 6% increase, we also have to deal with what we call the divisor. So if there was an influx of students to Pinkerton next year, that 4 to 6% budget increase could result in lower than a 4 to 6% increase for us, and that has happened. So it's really something, it's one of the more unpredictable pieces of our budgeting, and it constitutes a pretty significant portion of our budget.
So, but is the 6.7 projected for next year, is that a part of the 4.43% increase?
Yes,
It is, okay.
of the 6, yeah.
Okay.
That's at 6.
And we're counting on that number to
Well,
go
no, I'm saying
down.
the overall budget increase is 4.43, but the 6.7 million is included in that.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
it is.
Thank you.
And the other thing, the question that comes up, people will comment, wow, Pinkerton tuition, that's the best deal in town, and it is a really, really great deal. However, there are other direct and indirect costs. Transportation, we pay for our own transportation. Also, we are legally responsible for federal mandates, IEP, 504, McKinney-Vento, and so that is not factored into this tuition cost. And those are costs, just like with our own special ed budget, that do add up, so.
Okay, thank you.
And then personnel highlights. This is a very small list, so don't blink. We're really requesting one new position. This should not seem unfamiliar to folks, so we're looking to add a Hampstead Central School Special Education Coordinator. That would be at a salary of $98,800. And again, this position is, we already have the position, but it is grant funded. The idea is to move it from the grant to the operating budget. We do believe it is a necessary position for us to help support our student services team at the Central School, and also to help us maintain compliance with our federal obligations under IDEA. The question comes up, well, if it's in a grant, why not keep it there? The federal government frowns upon us keeping items continuously in a grant, because the concept is you're supposed to supplement and not supplant, which means IDEA, the grant, is for unanticipated expenses. And so we can keep it there, but there's no telling how long we'll be able to do that. We've also included $4,500 for additional stipends. And this is, to add UDL coaching to both of our schools. There's a very small stipend amount. We recognize in the data analysis that Nicole has done, we need to improve Tier 1 instruction. And the way to do that is through a variety of mechanisms. Today it was the administrators doing instructional walkthroughs and having conversations about instruction. Another way to do that is through coaching. And our schools have been highlighted by the state of New Hampshire for universal design for learning. And this was a stipend that we did have in the past. We want to bring it back. We also have a therapy dog program that is, in its infancy this year, and it's thriving. The feedback is amazing. And we want to make sure that the handlers are, there's a lot of time, prep, energy, and effort that goes into it, and we want to be able to help support them. And then there's also a little bit of money in there for the unknowns. So at the end of the school year, our principals are analyzing attendance data, participation rates of clubs and activities. The new school year starts, and there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm around a new club. We'd like to put a little bit of money in there for things that we don't know kids are interested in yet, and we'll find that out in the fall. And we're happy to report back in the fall how we're utilizing our clubs and activities, our funding to help support student programming, which is, at-risk prevention at its absolute best. And then just moving through, and I'm really going to go through these quickly because you've seen these last week. You've had the budget presentations from the department heads and building administrators. So HCS, again, none of these asks are big. We want to, improve our MTSS system, which you're going to hear Nicole talk a little bit more about. and we'll do that specifically with an investment in language arts. Replacement equipment, we've had the conversation before that, the furniture at the Central School is very old. In some cases, it's so old that it can even pose a safety risk. And this tends to be an item that when we have a default budget and we need to make some hard choices, this is a number that can get trimmed a little bit. So we want to really focus on this. And then summer literacy intervention program. This is something at the next meeting Dr. Cheney is going to talk a lot about. But again, there's concern about summer slide, continuity of reading services for our emergent readers, and we want to make sure that we are investing. And I think the program that she will share with the board is very exciting, and we look forward to moving forward with that. At the middle school, it's like Groundhog Day, but we'll talk about staging again. This is the 5th year that we've had this conversation. Field hockey nets, math, reflex, one school, one book, and then the tumbling mats for the PE class. All things that are definitely needed. And again, if you look at the overall budget, those are relatively reasonable asks. Technology. We continue to invest money in our infrastructure and in our cybersecurity response, and Joe has done an excellent job. Again, technology tends to be a department that is on a replacement cycle, and we're continuously replacing equipment. This is sort of a little bit of an off year, so there's not a lot of big requests here. That will change next year, so just be aware that what is being requested is because it's sort of an off-cycle year. The other thing that really continues to impress me with Joe is he is always on the lookout for a good grant opportunity. And it's become pretty common where things come across my desk and I reach out to Joe all excited. Hey Joe, look what I found. And Joe's like, oh, I saw it yesterday. He's really on top of it, and I appreciate it because we get a lot of emails and solicitations to apply for grants. Some of them are not worth the time and effort, and Joe is really does a nice job in determining which ones to apply for. And facilities, again, we want to keep both of our buildings in tip-top shape. So there is the gym calf partition wall replacement, and I know Dr. Poor in particular, had some questions about that and what the right product would be. It's a pretty big expense. We can continue to have that conversation. HCS elevator operator upgrade. Anytime you talk about elevators and parts repair, it's always a big number. HMS fire alarm field parts, again, Mr. Mackey's done a great job of sort of phasing in of the replacement of the fire panel, because again, that's also a very big expensive done all at once. And then again, continuing to do a roof section over at HCS. And anyone who owns a home and has replaced a roof realizes that $13,000 to replace a section of an elementary school roof is a pretty good deal. Curriculum highlights. Again, this is not an off year with curriculum, but we're looking at social studies. And social studies, Nicole has had conversations with team members. They're not looking for a big item purchase. Whether that's a textbook or workbooks, what they really need is time. And they need the opportunity to go out and look for new ideas, attend conferences. So this $13,000, when, in comparison to the 75-ish or 80 that we spent on math last year, is I think this is money well spent. And this is money that really goes into the hands of our educators, coming up with some of their own homegrown curriculum development. You'll see the $31,000 for district mentoring. This is a number you don't typically see because we usually fund this through Title II. So Title II is a federal grant for teacher development. And the reason you can continuously put mentoring into Title II is because you never know in budget season how many mentors you're going to need. So we're anticipating, this is an all-in cost. This is to pay for mentors throughout the year. We're anticipating total cost of around $31,000, but again, that number could change. And then student services, again, you've heard me say it, Melissa's just done a masterful job year in really truly getting a firm understanding of that budget. And so there are some increases. The Pinkerton tuition is one of them. Specialized transportation, continues to go up. And then other professional services. So we have contracted services, and those are services that are delivered here in the district for our in-district students. This is a different line. These are other professional services, are contracted services that are paid to either out-of-district placements or to charter schools. And we're seeing a trend where the out-of-district tuition is really kind of a la carte now. And the additional services that are required, these schools are charging school districts for, and they are very expensive. And this is sort of a newer development. It's not just true in Hampstead, it's true for a lot of other districts as well. And then lastly, a slide that I always think is really important just to give you some perspective, and this is really where we value the input of the board, is not included in the operating budget. And so number one is HMS Septic, the leach bed, at a cost of $231,750. So the reason this isn't in the operating budget is the board has demonstrated a commitment to funding this through capital reserve. I know that the board still needs to deliberate on that. And utilizing capital reserve funds, which were already raised through previous taxation. So there'll be no new tax impact for voters in March should the board finalize this on the warrant. Another item that we included last year is a 12-person passenger van that was about $98,000. Mr. Dowd has really kind of taken a deep dive into a lot of the busing transportation regulations, and they're very complicated, including placing restrictions on who can pick up a student from their home and drive them to school. So that has to be done by a person who holds a license to be a bus driver, whereas some districts will use their vans to transport students throughout the day to different locations. And right now that cost versus what we think we could recoup in transportation savings, it's just not there unless the board were interested in us actually hiring a driver with a certification. HCS math specialist, every year Dr. Cheney fights really hard to have this included. It is just, it's a big expense, $115,000. That's just to note too, that's salary and benefits. That includes health insurance. That is essentially what we would believe we would have to budget in order to secure a person for that position. And again, the other issue with that is space. It's increasingly difficult to find instructional spaces for students at the central school. And then one that we just got to continuously keep on the radar, and that is we are one of the few, very, very small handful of students, Dr. Hussing, two school districts that don't have universal kindergarten. So we have a guaranteed half-day program and then a tuition-based program for those who are lucky enough to be able to win the lottery. We talk about early intervention. We talk about what we can do to ensure equity and make sure our students are fully prepared. This is a highly leveraged thing that we could do. The problem is it's not just the cost, it's also the space. But I did talk to Dr. Cheney today, and she had proposed that we put together a full-day kindergarten task force to just take a look at it so that we could come to the board and be able to say, okay, we could, but here's the trade-off. And of course, that comes with a great impact to other programs in the school if that were something that we would want to move forward with. And that really is it. I'll entertain any questions that the board might have about the proposed operating budget for the 26-27 school year.
Joe, can you do me a favor and go back to the pie chart, the 26, 27? So on this, right, so salaries are locked in, benefits are locked in, transportation for the most part is locked in, tuition's locked in, right? So that's 80% of the budget is locked in, a little bit more than that. What's the fund transfers?
So we budget our federal grants fund. The expenditures there, we have to, under gross appropriations, we have to include those expenditures in our budget. So I call those a fund transfer. Everything is budgeted in our 100 fund. And let's say our fund transfer for food service, another one of our funds is 400,000. I put a line in our 100 fund operating budget of 400,000, and that is a placeholder for the entire food service budget, let's say, of 400,000. And it's the same thing with grants. If grants are 600,000, I put one line operating budget under the 100. I just transfer that over to the fund so that all of our expenditures are accounted for in one tidy fund.
Okay. So assuming that not some issue with a grant or something that will come from another source like federal funding or somewhere else?
Correct, yeah. So
okay.
It's all offset by revenue.
Okay.
If we don't spend it, we don't get the revenue in.
All right. So basically you're looking at expenses, which is 6%, utilities, which is, and repair, which is 2%, and supplies. So you're looking at 9% of the budget is basically what we have to look at and play with. Is that about right?
Yeah, I would say that's correct. I mean, did you say you included utilities in there? Because I would call that a fixed expense.
Well, yeah.
And depending on, our approach to repairs, I would say that's a fixed expense too. Yeah, no, you're right. And I think, Dr. Port's made this, observation before when, because we started looking at the expense budget. And if you were to ask our department heads and our principals, that's where a lot of time and energy goes. When, again, zero-based budgeting, they're calling vendors, getting price, using real numbers, and there's a large amount of time, effort, and energy that goes into a portion of the budget that, like you said, Carl, might be 9%, maybe 10% of the budget.
Okay.
Jeff, around the Pinkerton tuition, when you were speaking, you said you budget 8%. On the sheet, it says 6%.
Yeah. I budgeted initially for 8%.
Yeah.
We've since been given guidance about 6%. And what Bob had mentioned about the divisor, that their budget might be going up 6%, 8%, but if there are more students, then that gets distributed accordingly. Because we may potentially have 30 additional students going there, we're a significant contributor to that additional divisor next year. So I'm hoping that will help us get a per student cost lower.
Yeah, when we were at the city council meeting, we were looking at the last 4 years, and Pinkerton was saying relatively stable or slightly going up. Every other town was going down, and we were the ones going up. So if it was the same, that would be helpful to us, but we're actually the reason we're doing more kids, and every kid is an extra $15,000, so, yeah.
And at the Sending Town meeting, that's where they gave us the 6 to 8% number, and, we made a plea, in our town and the other Sending Towns as well. We can't put a 6 to 8% total budget in front of our voters. That's just, it's not fiscally responsible, so we did ask Pinkerton to take another look at that. And a few days after that plea, they came back and said, okay, it's not 6 to 8. We'll look to do 4 to 6.
So we should have our final tuition numbers in, and I can plug those numbers directly in and get that as a final number the next few weeks, I'd say, Bob.
Yeah.
What was the difference between the default budget and the budget we asked for last year? Do you remember?
780,000.
About 700,000, yeah.
About 700,000. And we don't have a default number yet, right?
Not quite yet,
Because
no.
we wouldn't be able to, yeah. Okay.
We'll have that for the next meeting.
I guess I just had a couple questions. On the HCS budget, the testing, scoring for the Acadians, if they go to the online administration, is that going to be a new yearly cost?
Nicole is shaking her head and saying yes.
I know it's a small cost, I just think we're working in a deep budget, and I feel like if we could look at things as wants versus needs, it's not a need. Thing with the Math Reflex program, how many students, I know it's written as 5th and 6th grade, but how many students would actually utilize that program?
Yeah, just under, so that would be all of 5th grade and 6th grade. So yeah, you're looking at just under about 180 students.
And we talked about that last time, but our iReady curriculum does offer the fluency flight practice. I know it's not tracked as nicely, but there's other ways to assess facts. And we have the practice built into iReady. So just, I know they seem like small costs, but just something to think about.
Absolutely, and really that's what tonight is about, right? Like we, here is what we're proposing, and this is, obviously we're still working on getting more concrete numbers, and this is the opportunity for the board to chime in, and we go and meet as a team and, can make some decisions about whether or not we want to prioritize. I think, one of the things that, and again, through this MTSS training that the district is partnering with the Department of Ed on, we keep hearing about the need for, improvement in Tier 1. And that was, I think, a driver of some of the decisions around some of the software purchases for this upcoming school year. But, we do want to make sure that we're not creating any redundancy between some of these programs.
My other question, since it's a very large cost going into our budget, removing the HCS coordinator from the grant and thinking about Tier 1 and looking at the math specialist or even full-day kindergarten about what would be the best impact for all of our students, I guess I would like to just hear some more about this. I know we've seen the job title for the HCS coordinator, but I'd like to hear more about what his daily responsibilities are and kind of how that role has impacted special ed.
Absolutely, and we can certainly do that. And that was a conversation after the last meeting. I did have with Dr. Cheney, and she's at the next board meeting, and she's going to be talking about the summer reading intervention program. And so what we can do is we can bring some of that information around job responsibilities and job duties.
Intervention program. I know Dr. Cheney's not here to talk to it now, but just curiosity question again, what would we consider doing partnering with our town library? I don't know what other resources they might have. Maybe it's part of it.
Yeah, do you want to talk? Yeah, that's so funny because that is actually a part of it.
There we go.
Yeah. It was your idea. No.
Okay, so I won't. Yes, we are partnering with the town library. We have a new children's librarian in town. We have a great relationship with the library. They offer a lot of enrichment during early release days, summer, school vacations, and so we actually applied for another grant recently, and I approached her about partnering with us on that initiative and also for our summer program. The goal, like we were saying with the data presentation, is both at school and home. And so if the library can help us by providing either materials, a forum, space, the marketing, just to get those young families in, give them the tools they need for good reading strategies as opposed to less than great reading strategies, that can really help us. So yes, it's a great idea.
Do you want to talk about the grant?
Sure, we applied for a grant. It was due November 7th. It is called Bridging the Gap in the 603. And actually, it's 306 are minimum standards, so they play with that a lot. So it's Bridging the Gap 306. And it's basically a literacy grant to help us. In our case, it would be to continue our letters training so that we get 100% of our elementary staff letters trained, and then to implement letters coaches in the district, and those coaches would be coached by the state, so it would be like kind of a direct line with state experts to make sure that we're implementing really great structured literacy in our elementary classrooms. We would be eligible, we're applying for $35,000. it's based on your enrollment. So that money would be spread over, I believe it's a 3-year period, and we'd be in a cohort. So there are other districts that have been through, they're now in cohort round number 3. So you work closely with other districts who are at a similar kind of implementation and learn from them, which I think is the best for our teachers when they learn from other colleagues, and we can go on site visits and kind of see what works. It's such a win for them to see programs, in place.
All right. So, board members, tonight we don't necessarily need to make a decision because there are several meetings that will happen prior to us needing to set budget numbers for the warrant. However, just to give a little background, historically we've given Bob recommendations to work with. What would it look like if we cut 100,000, 200,000, 300,000? For me personally, and I'll just throw this idea out there, and I'm curious of your thoughts. I'm more leaning towards, would it look like if we got the budget to match the increase for Social Security of 2.8%? To me, a 2.8% increase seems like something that might be palatable to our taxpayers on a warrant. And I feel like 4.43 isn't quite there. So again, just looking for your thoughts on possibly taking that approach.
So that's about 621,000 difference. So I think that the biggest thing, my biggest concern is we had default last year. So if you're looking for an increase, the increase this year is both this year and what we probably needed last year. For example, like the 265,000 out of the 723,000 was just the leach field alone, right? Because that was in the budget last year. I mean, I think it is a good exercise in case we go to default, and I think it would be good for the communication program. So if we look at that, if you vote it down, you're effectively probably going to get what Social Security is, but this is what you lose. And I think it's, what we do for the community is great, but I think what you lose, it's a turnout game, right? Mm-hmm. Do you care enough to show up on that night to vote, and you get what you put into the system? So last year, not enough people showed up to pass it, and that's why we had less.
And I can tell you, so first of all, I appreciate you saying that, Andy, because I have conversations with community members that don't have children in our school. They're on a fixed income. And when they talk about, their meager Social Security increase, it's hard to present an argument, right? We know that education is an investment. We know it's expensive, but at the end of the day, these are people trying to put food on their table and, keep the lights on. So I like the idea of that balance, like what would it look like to get there? And I would say that if we come back and, I don't want to commit, but if Pinkerton came back and it was a 4% increase, getting closer to that 2.8 number, it's definitely, it's not out of the realm of impossible. The other thing that we have right now is there's a little bit of uncertainty in our support staff numbers based upon just some moves, and that's something that we weren't prepared tonight to adjust, but we'll have more information for the next meeting, and that could be something that we could take out as well. That's always a tricky one, right? Because, okay, you have a handful of kids that move out, they don't require the service, and then in December, which is a time of the year where families move in, now we need to hire again. So it's a little bit of a risk, but I think presenting this scenario of like what it might look like to get to that 2.8 is not unreasonable. We can certainly do that.
And again, how soon will we know about Pinkerton's finalized number?
think they meet next week. I know I think they're the third, they meet the third of the week of the month.
Okay.
And I can reach out to Dr. Powers and try to get an answer.
Is there going to be any way to cut $638,000 out of the budget without cutting existing people, not positions, but like actual people?
Yes, possibly, right? Okay. We have, just to throw it out there, and I've had like individual conversations with board members, but we have 2 part-time positions that in the 5 years I've been here, we've never filled.
Yeah.
And in, the analysis that Melissa has done, with some of the changes that we're experiencing around move-outs, absorbing the 2 positions we've never hired for. And, IDEA compels us, we're obligated to provide the students with disabilities all of the accommodations that are in their IEP. So if a student comes in and they need that support, they're going to get it. It just becomes an item that we didn't budget for. So, we can make that change. I don't see a scenario where, I wouldn't recommend to the board at this point trying to get to that number with having to make any type of substantive staffing cut to existing people who work for us.
I just remember last year when we did the 723, it was basically 250 for the leach field, right? Got us down to 500,000. We moved the special education back in IDEA, and then we just cut everything we could to avoid cutting any active positions. And I feel like we're right back where we were before. So
yeah, and that's really the great thing about, well, I was like great, that's not the right word, but that's what I appreciate about the default budget process is that, yes, Jeff goes and he recalculates it with all of the new stuff taken out, but the new stuff doesn't actually get taken out. It's just the number.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we come back to the board, and the board gets to decide what are the priorities. So when people say, yeah, we're operating off the default budget, well, we are, but the board made a commitment in April or May last year to these are the things we're going to take out. And there was a strong commitment on the part of the board when it comes to instruction, do no harm. And, we cut things out of maintenance, and we found other ways to be able to reduce the budget. And we would, go through that process again. Every year that you have a default, it gets harder and harder and harder. You just ask some of our neighboring districts, they've been under default for several years, and it is having a major impact on the delivery of instruction. We're not there. I don't want us to get there, but that is sort of the consequence over time.
So the 14 people watching at home and the people that they talk to, I think it's important that they understand that it was hard last time. It'll be exceptionally hard this time to not have staff cuts. So.
The budget that there were approximations on how much some of the software licenses, for example, would go up. Everywhere from 7% to 9%, which seems to be what a lot of these applications are doing. How far away are we from knowing what the actual increases would be? Do we already know that? And when does that happen?
Well, if we did know that it would be reflected in the numbers that.
So these are the current numbers, so this is accounting for their increases, okay.
Yeah, some of that, we will typically go into the new year with a number of unanticipated expenses that we learned about after the public hearing, when it's really kind of a little too late to make those adjustments. We anticipate that will happen, but it can also happen on the other end where we come in with lower costs, and again, looking for grant opportunities helps to offset some of that difference. So,
Board members, any other questions for Bob around the budget? Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Bob.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Board members, during our last meeting, we talked about the potential creation of a special education trust fund, and if that were to happen, then a warrant article would need to be developed to create that fund, and then an additional warrant article would be needed to fund it. The last time we talked, a few of you expressed feeling like you didn't have enough information to make an informed decision, and I kind of wanted to put it back on the table and allow us to talk through it some more, to figure out whether we want to move forward with it in this budget year or not. So
already that it's going to be difficult to pass a budget, just knowing economic times, do we think it's prudent for us to try to put something like this across to the voters? Sorry, I was just asking, I said, while we're talking about budget and discussing that it might be a little bit difficult to pass our current budget, do we think that it really is prudent to put another warrant article, essentially asking for another fund to be established, monies to go into that, prudent timing to try to have that conversation with our taxpayer audience?
At this point, I think I think it may be worth establishing it and doing the $1 amount just to have it in case later on it's possible. But yeah, I don't think we're going to have enough money to put anything in there, especially because we need capital reserve, because we need to pay for the leach field.
I'll just say that's exactly where my head's at as well. I acknowledge the impact that special education costs has had thus far, and the kind of unanticipated costs that come with that year after year. So I feel like the need for the creation of the fund exists. Do we necessarily have the ability to properly fund it yet? No, but as a part of this board's kind of long-term legacy, we have the opportunity to put us in a better financial situation to hopefully offset some of the unanticipated costs for special ed.
I would agree with both of you. I don't think we can fund it, but I think we should establish it, and if it's $1, it's $1 just to get it going. Especially where we don't know where other funding is going to be in the future.
Right.
I don't think we should put it off.
Yeah, and then if we don't have bigger capital reserve stuff the following year, or whatever, then I think it's somewhere where we can bank some money just in case. So effectively what it is really is insurance, right? It's paying up front so that hopefully you can have it back. And so Jeff, when it's in a fund like that, just like capital reserve, we put it into a very safe investment, right? So we are earning some level of interest on them.
The funds are held by the town's trustees of the trust fund.
Okay.
And they invest and typically look for that balance between safe and return.
Okay. Yeah, so it's not just sitting there. It would actually, in fact, gain some level of money to offset inflation.
Yep.
Okay.
And Jeff, can you kind of inform the public just on what that would look like if and when we needed to pull from that fund?
So I anticipate that we would need to pull from the fund if perhaps we had move-ins or we had some students starting in the district who were not budgeted and were not anticipated. And I would say that those expenses could be between $100,000 and $200,000. At that point, I would look at the budget and evaluate whether we can cover what we have, our existing obligations, plus that additional burden. And if not, it would be something that I would come to the board and say, hey, it looks like we're going to be spending down our line for XYZ, placement, outside services, schools, whatever it is. And we do have this funding available, and the board theoretically would be the ones to authorize a disbursement from that to cover our expenses. What I would do is I send the board's approval along with whatever receipts I would have, whatever backup I would have supporting those costs to the trustee confidentially, redacted, and then they would release the funds to us.
Excellent. So in terms of board action, do we need to take action tonight?
No, you don't. And I did say that I would, provide some data. I don't have an exhaustive list of towns, but Winnicott, Hampton, Newington, Fremont, Hollis, Brookline, Southampton, Seabrook, Stratham, Deerfield. And that's just
based upon, that's like a limited amount of data. But, so, there are districts that have them. Again, there's different strategies of put the question out there to establish it and, put a dollar in it. I don't know that at least putting the questions out, again, with the warrant articles, it's great because it's the will of the voters. What do they want to do? I understand that you want to be cautious because you don't want to put a warrant article out there that may jeopardize our support staff contract or our operating budget. But I don't know that you would make that argument if you were to at least try to establish it.
Right.
And again, as a student services, assistant superintendent of student services in Hollis and Brookline, we had it and, used it. And again, this is a decision of the board, but it does allow for greater accuracy in your overall budgeting. And I say that because we have to anticipate that we're going to have an out-of-district placement for some students, because if we don't, we don't have the funds to do that. So when we talk about zero-based budgeting, we're not doing that in our tuition line. We can't. We're not necessarily doing that in our contracted services. When you establish a healthy trust, you're able to do that because you can budget with accuracy knowing that there's money off to the side if unanticipated expenses. Without that, we have to build in some of those unanticipated expenses into the operating budget.
So my question might be answered a little bit in what you just said. We have houses for sale on my street. Someone moves in, say, with a child that has a lot of needs. This could happen at any point. What do we do today if that occurs and we have someone that we need to support? Or is the money built into the existing budget to cover that as an anticipated thing that may happen, or do we have to pull from somewhere else to cover it?
So currently we budget for what we reasonably anticipate could be happening in the future. And so we may have a student move in, but a student may have also moved out. And so we've had a lot of that in the past where perhaps we may anticipate a number of students having the potential to go out, and we have to budget for the likelihood that they will go out. It's entirely possible if one of those students doesn't go out and we have a move-in, then they can replace that from a budgetary perspective. So, and then I don't think we'd ever be at a point that we would simply, even with a reserve fund, that we would look and say, this is exactly the number of placements that we know we have this year just to roll forward into next year. I don't think that we would be doing that. We would still be having to take a look and say, well, we have these. We know there are going to be placements next year. We may plan for 3 additional or 2 additional, and 1 may materialize. So we've been able to do that in the past, where we've move in and move out, but perhaps we budget and we were able to not send a student out, and that student who's moving in can take the place of that student who we anticipated may go out.
And the other piece of this too is some of our in-district students have a tremendous associated cost. Right? We often look at the out-of-district placement, right? The school that we send a student to, and look at their transportation. But some of the services that we provide to give people a free and appropriate public education, it's not always about the kids that we're sending to a special education school. It's transportation. Can be paraeducator support. It can be a specialized program, and so you never know.
Okay. Great discussion by the board. Thank you. Moving on to communications planning update with Bob.
Yeah, so I'm going to start, and then I want to hand it over to Denise and Missy, because they've really done a lot of work with this. So we talked about the need for improved communication around the budget, right? We can never over-communicate. And we sort of seized on what I think was a successful model that we used to get the building project passed. And so building on that, we've come up with a communication plan. We have I guess I'd describe it as sort of an ad hoc committee of folks, which is Missy and Denise, and we've extended membership to Bob Weimer, who's not only a citizen but also on the budget committee as well. And so we had a meeting a few weeks ago, and the goal of the meeting was to kind of make this document a little bit more finalized, but more specifically, really the goal is to meet the month before to firm up the activities for that month. So we meet in November to finalize what it looks like we're going to do in December, and then we'll meet in December to look at what we're going to do for January. I think we learned an important lesson from the building project, and that is sometimes people have short-term memories. And when you do a lot of, you take a lot of action in December and January, people it kind of tends to fall off people's radar. So a significant effort should be made in late February and in early March when we come back from February break. But that doesn't mean that in December we can't, begin to engage in some of these activities. And so I don't know if I want to turn it over to Denise. Do you want to talk about a few of these?
Sure, I can. Missy, is that okay? Was there anything that you wanted to add before I got into some detail? Are you good? Okay. All right, so kind of in the spirit of what Bob was saying in regards to the flow of information, we are going to be trying a variety of tactics, so everything from online, traditional print media, social media, targeted lists, different events in person, also virtual, then also leaning into video, which we know is great consumable content, pretty much by all ages at this point, in demographics, and really making our website home base. So having a budget center where people can go to get all the information that they hear. So whether they experience it online in the social realm, read it in the paper, they know they can go back to home base, as it were, on the website and get all the things that they wanted to know. Also reaching out to some community groups. So in the world of communications, they say that you have 8 seconds to capture your reader, and that is true, especially in today's day and age where information moves fast and furious. So we do have a variety of different things on here. Slow roll in December. I think the goal there is actually to give people enough information so that they start to be curious and asking the questions, right? Because we want to make sure that we're answering what people are curious about, and then having good resources for them so that they can become more informed as we approach the vote. Happy to dive into any of the ideas and things that we have more specifically, if that's helpful. I can talk print, social, wherever people may have questions, or I can just run through the list or just run down.
Well, I think one important piece is if we're committing, if we're committing to making a TikTok video in December, we really should discuss who's going to be starring in that video.
Yeah, and we certainly could. So one thing, so we actually do a lot of this at my workplace. We do a lot of video. So it is incredibly useful to schedule like 30 minutes of time, capture all the video you want, and then cut it into all the pieces. So it's really, grand scheme of things, minimal time ask. But then it's just that post-production work to make sure that you're rolling out the clips and all of that. So for something in December, if we were kind of a day in the life, talk about how the budget is supporting teachers, students, staff, that could be walkthroughs at the school, meeting and stopping to, everyone from the art teacher to maybe someone's in student services, working with children, et cetera, and just covering some of those, like, where are your dollars going? Here's the inside look into where they're going. So we can talk through that separately about how that would work, but that's kind of the idea.
And there, and I love that idea. There's also, some items on here that we typically do. So I still haven't reached out to the select board, but we generally go in early December to just give a presentation. And, it's a real kind of tricky, delicate thing, right? We are a traditional town government, and school boards are independent of municipal government. But the town is a significant partner with us, and we actually have a great relationship with them. So, making sure that we're informing them, we're, getting feedback when feedback is appropriate. So, traditionally it's been Andy and I and Jeff that have gone to the select board. Where there's room for one more, that won't create a quorum. And then in talking with Bob Weimer from the Budget Committee, going to the Budget Committee meeting in December, and we sort of talked about, like, what does that look like? So with this, when the school board or the school district is, we're not a department of the town, and so that really should look a little different than it would if DPW or the fire department or the police department was going there. So we're happy to go. We just want to see, like, what does that look like? Because the goal is to get information out.
I'll just say I love the steady ramp up month after month, particularly on social media, of just increasing the communications as we approach March. and then having the website be home base. I think the more we can kind of beef up accessibility in that area will just be great for the future, because there's a lot of helpful things on that website, and a lot of times you have to dig 10 layers deep to find it. And I think that should be the primary goal, is to just take those 10 layers and make it one really easy to find layer. Awesome job so far.
So I will reach out to the select board to get a date that we can commit to. We'll, generally take the budget presentation that we've done and modify it a little bit to be a little bit shorter. And then I can circulate an interest in the TikTok video. I like the idea of, we'll maybe collect a lot of short video clips and put them all together, and then we'll set up a date for the December meeting for our communications committee.
And I think I heard, I can't remember which one of you told me about it, but in another town that did this, it was a shared effort of all board members doing little snippets that was then cut into a clip. So I love to perform, but I would also love to see your faces via TikTok. Yes.
I will absolutely do a TikTok video dance with you, Andy.
Oh. Only if we have
Well,
mustaches.
now I know there's dancing involved. Count me in. And you've heard me say it before, larger districts have communications people, and I'm not recommending that. If you wanted to spend money, I would say let's get a math specialist, right? But it makes it tricky that at our busiest times of the year, it's really difficult for the building principals to get on Facebook and post things. So, many hands make light work, and so being able to have the board engage in some of those communication strategies is great.
Yeah.
So appreciate it.
While we're talking about communication, I think it's important to note here, in prior meetings, we talked about the New Hampshire Fair Funding Project and potentially using them and having them come and present. We have made a decision not to move forward with that. In meeting with them, we decided they didn't exactly align with our goals. So we're on to new things, and honestly, in seeing this and discussing some other potential options with Bob, I think we are still on a good path where we can control the narrative and also surface the same kind of important data elements that I think they provide.
I would agree.
All right. Moving on to the Education Freedom Account discussion.
All right, this is the exciting part of the program. So as the board is aware, and many people in the public, the state of New Hampshire has what's called Education Freedom Accounts. And this is really sort of a new pathway for families. So without getting too much into the weeds, as a parent, when your child is 5 years old, you have to educate them. And there are a couple different options. You can go with public school, you can go with private school, you can go with a charter school, or you can homeschool. They've added essentially what is now a sort of fifth option, which is an educational freedom account. And I included in the board packet the technical advisory that has been long awaited. And essentially what an educational freedom account is that parents put together a program for their child, and they can be reimbursed for expenses that I believe are up to $5,200 per year. So again, another educational pathway. We think that that's great. We know that public school does not work for every single kid, and so it's great. The issue that the board needs to consider is when we have families receiving an EFA, And they want to participate in an extracurricular or co-curricular activity. They want to join the band. They want to join a sport. How we approach that is being left to the districts, each individual district, which I appreciate. So there really are a couple of some things that the board needs to consider, and I'm not recommending a decision tonight because I think that it would be our hope that the New Hampshire School Board Association may come up with a model policy. It's unclear as to whether or not they'll do that. But essentially, we have a couple of different options. So a family receives an EFA, and they want to enroll here, and they want to play, let's say, soccer. Do we charge them? So we can say, yes, we're going to plan to charge them. We'd come up with a fee schedule. Or we could say, nope, if you are residents, we're not going to, we understand that you're getting an EFA, we're not going to charge you, we're going to allow you to have access. And then a third option is, what happens when non-residents approach us about taking classes? Because when you're a homeschool student, you have access to the public school. And we will on occasion have a student that might enroll in a class. We get a proportion of adequacy aid. We get a small amount of money. It comes to our curricular school day, homeschool students that enroll, we will receive funding for that. The question really, because we don't receive funding from the state for the after-school co-curricular, extracurricular activities. So I wanted to throw it out to the board just to get a sense of the thought, and then that will sort of inform what we do in terms of, and just to be clear, we have not had anyone that has approached us to access the public schools that's receiving an EFA. We do have a list. We're able to access how many families. There's approximately 22 students that live in Hampstead that are receiving an EFA. A lot of them are in the younger grades. And most, not all, but most of them have never stepped foot in a Hampstead public school. My last count was there was one that had. So I throw that out there to the board again, not looking for a decision, but what direction are we looking to move in? And I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Board members, any thoughts? I'll just, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so you could say to, if you're a resident, we're not going to charge you, even if you're receiving the EFA, but if you're a non-resident, we will. And that, the idea of charging non-residents sort of makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. So that we can delineate between resident and non-resident.
And just food for thought, I'm the president of a soccer club, and there are parents in that club that submit for invoices towards their EFAs for their child's extracurricular activities, and I think it's important to note all of the different things that can potentially make up that is it $4,200?
Up to $5,200.
Up to $5,200. And yeah, we don't have to make a decision tonight, but I think it's worth the discussion. And I am interested to hear, even if you don't have thoughts tonight, ponder what we think the direction should be. Carl, anything to add?
I guess the question is, I do think the in-town versus out-of-town thing is definitely something to consider. If they're coming in and we already have programs, them using a program is not going to necessarily incur an additional cost. Like, if we're doing a play and they come in and they're participating in a play, or we're doing some sort of extracurricular, like, it's not like having one more person is necessarily going to add that much into it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's relatively new, so there's still a little bit of ambiguity. And I can tell you, I had a conversation with the attorney from the DOE last Friday, and the technical advisory's been written to kind of give some of that responsibility and decision-making to local districts, so we appreciate that, right? So there is some guidance in our homeschool policy and in the homeschool regulations that say, if there's room, and then you have to have a criteria to evaluate, like, with the sports team, like, you don't just get to join the sports team. If there are tryouts, you have to try out. And what I think it would be reasonable to suggest that we would apply for our resident students, we would apply the same sort of criteria for EFAs as we would for homeschool.
I mean, as long as it's not Arizona and they're going to Disney World and charging it to Freedom accounts. I don't know. I have to think about this more.
And in terms of revenue, is there any sort of like benefit to, like, if we were to charge them, are we considering that revenue for the district?
You could, but I question our ability to look at that as a solid revenue stream.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's so few, probably so few that meet the criteria.
Yeah, the thing that we would want to do just to avoid any claim of discrimination is like having create a fee schedule that has uniformity to it, right? So if we're going to say that it's $100 to participate in, a fall sport, that's across the board, and we charge that to everybody, unless there's some financial need that we can identify. Sure. It was interesting because the conversation that we had with the superintendents last Friday was, if you have, and I know we don't have a high school, but if you were to have an AP physics class and you have a certified teacher who's really good, that's gold. People will pay big money for that. And so some school districts, Hollis Brookline High School, where my wife works, is a great example. There are people that would pay big bucks to be able to be in an AP physics course. Well, they could look at it as a source of revenue. If there's 18 Hollis Brookline kids in there, and they can add 7 more, and they can charge $6,000 a piece, that is something that they could look at as a revenue stream. I don't see that as a path for us. I just, when we're talking about a $38 million budget, like, we're talking about small.
I don't know if the amount of time that you would actually spend on it would be worth the money you're getting back to institute something like that, especially when people are short on time anyways. But then there's not the ethics of it, but I don't know.
And, in the absence, like many things, not just EFAs, in the absence of policy, that is where the administration has to make judgments, right? Tomorrow, we could have an EFA student, and maybe that will happen based upon our meeting tonight. We'll have to make a decision. I would communicate whatever decision was made to say that, this could be subject to change based upon the board. But, in talking with the Department of Ed and talking with the superintendent group, I think they do, want school boards to be informed and make a decision at the board level, because it has a lot more teeth to it. And then, we'll wait and see. We don't have to wait for New Hampshire School Boards Association to come up with model policy. They may not. Sometimes they avoid some of the more controversial issues. This could be one of them. And if that's the case, we can have this be part of procedures that the administration develops, or it can be a policy that we craft ourselves and bring to the policy committee. We don't have to make a decision tonight, but it's just something that this is a very hot topic, and one that I think we just want to make sure we're well positioned if we start to receive some of these EFA students.
I don't feel comfortable making a decision tonight because my attention span's actually a little low too. So I think I need more time to be able to process it. Yep. My coffee's running out.
Fair enough. All right. Moving on, we have our second read of 3 policies. We have AB, the Parental Bill of Rights. Number 2 is AB, the people and their school district. And number 3 is EBCH, around chemical safety and the hygiene plan. And Bob and Jeff, there haven't been any substantive changes to these policies since our first read, correct?
There has not.
So I will make a motion to adopt the 3 policies, AB, Parental Bill of Rights, AB, the people in their school district, and EBCH, Chemical Safety and Hygiene Plan, as written.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All approved. All right, moving on to board comments and correspondence. Board members, anything to share? I don't have anything either. It's a light day. All right, moving on to the personnel report.
And there's nothing for the personnel report.
And the superintendent's report.
So let's start with, let's have Director of Student Services, Melissa McDonald, is going to talk about our special education review process.
Try again.
Okay, let's try again.
There we
I
go.
can hear myself. So last spring I had mentioned that that in a year we would be undergoing our what's called PAGS process, which is the Program Approval and General Supervision Monitoring. Our Assistant Director Francine Flynn and I went to our introductory session at the Department of Education last month, and we have just been assigned our support person from the Bureau of Special Education, Amy Garsu. On a day-to-day basis, she's the person that is overseeing secondary and post-secondary transition, but she's also a lead person for districts going through this process. So this will start in January upon return of our holiday break and run through June. The first portion of this process will be a heavy lift on us as a district to provide documentation that's requested. And then the second part of the process is the Bureau of Special Ed going through everything that we have submitted, asking for more information if needed, and letting us know where we stand within our process. We have approximately 19 students that who's maybe chosen for file reviews. I say approximately because it's supposed to be about 7% of our students on IEPs at both Central School, the middle school, and then they are combining Pinkerton and out of district together in one group because of Pinkerton's status being a private public. So on Tuesday, January 13th, from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, Amy is coming out to our district to have what she's calling an initial leadership meeting. So I am looking to put together a group with some representation from different areas. They include our district administration, building administration, some professional staff from each of our buildings that fall under student services. I'd love to have a school board representative if any of you are interested, as well as a parent representative. There is also going to be a partnership with the Parent Information Center, or PIC as it's also known, that's based out of Concord. Jen Kuna, Michelle Lewis, and their crew are going to be reaching out to put together a parent focus group to pull together some information about how special education is going in our district. They promise to keep it in a positive light because they are looking for feedback that can be used to just continue to make us better. So I'll have more information about that as the process gets closer as well. Are there any questions?
So the intent of the file review is to, I guess, assess our effectiveness in addressing special ed, or what's the overall intent?
We used to have what's called on-site reviews, and that's when people from the Bureau of Special Ed would come to districts and they'd pull files and they'd be looking for specific items within IEPs or within evaluations, and they would give us a rating based on that, and then the outcome of that would be improvement, what we can do to make sure that we're staying within compliance. They've shifted that now, and so instead everything is done primarily online. So I don't know exactly what they're going to be looking for yet.
Okay.
I do know that they have told us they're staying within the current IEP cycle, so when they're providing us with the SACID numbers, the IEP that's currently in place is the information they'll be looking at, unless it's only been in place for a very short period of time, and then they may have to go back to the IEP that had been approved prior to that. But specifically what they're looking for, we're still waiting to hear.
Okay, but essentially we'll get a report of all the documented feedback on how we can
Absolutely.
improve?
Yes,
Okay.
yep. They're going to be looking for service delivery logs to make sure that our case managers providing specially designed instruction, as well as any related service providers, have evidence of providing that service. So I have been meeting with our departments within each building just to ensure that we have something that is not going to be too time-consuming, but that will meet the needs of the information they're looking for.
Board members, any other questions? Thank you.
I'll provide updates as we go through the process.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Tomaselli is going to talk a little bit about our partnership with the New Hampshire Education Department and around MTSS framework.
Hello, so our teams, we have several team members from each building, recently attended the MTSS framework training for MTSS-B that the New Hampshire Department of Ed offered. It's a new kind of restructure at the Department of Ed. They have an Office of Wellness that is now running these free trainings for school districts. So we attended a virtual online training as a district committee. Then we sent people to Concord to attend a Tier 1 training, and then there was recently a Tier 2, Tier 3 training. So it's very interesting to talk to other districts about MTSS-B and what they're doing, the screeners they use, how they work with some of the current legislation around SEL and non-academic surveys, and then also how much fidelity they have to the programs that they're using. So through this process, we did kind of a reflective exercise internally and listed all of the things we do that touch MTSS-B, and I believe our list was around 58 different kind of, I don't want to say initiatives, but different aspects of our school days that kind of are MTSS-B related. So we kind of whittled that list down to what are our essentials, and then ranked each program with what are we doing really well, what do we need to do better, and what are some things that we do but aren't really pervasive in the tiers. So it's a very reflective exercise, but then also we have a chance to build out on this framework and kind of communicate with our staff in the community. What does the true MTSS-B system look like? How do we evaluate children's needs? How do we meet those needs in Tier 1? And then when they're not being met, what does it look like in Tier 2? And then if it gets to a Tier 3 situation, how do we measure that? How do we monitor that? And who is implementing those things? So it's been a really interesting, somewhat painful process to have to like really peel back the onion and say, how does this work for a kiddo? And what are we doing not so well, and where can we improve? So we've wrapped up the initial trainings, and now we are very fortunate that we're part of a community of practice. These will be online kind of virtual cohorts that meet regularly to share resources. And, the Office of Wellness has a lot of amazing resources. So they'll come on site, they'll offer webinars, they have a lot of grant money, so it's great to be in connection with them.
I think if you go back to the goals that we had at the beginning of the year, this was one of the goals, to have a systematic MTSS A and B program. And we have an MTSS A and B program. What we've learned through this process is we're doing a lot. There are a lot of interventions that we have. There is no shortage of people who care about children in our school district. And with so much comes some inefficiencies, some redundancies. And so that's all the more reason that we really, truly need to systematize a lot of the work. And I feel like at the beginning of the year when we rolled out the goals, it was like, okay, we will be back in May or June with here's our plan. I think that the training that we've done, the partnership with NHED, has accelerated that. And I'd like to say we should be able to come back in January and say, here's our plan, because
Okay.
we're not going to necessarily be doing anything new.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to do it a little differently and a little bit more systematically.
And prior to January, whether it comes just directly to the board or we do it in a meeting, would you be willing to, I guess, kind of show the board like the gaps where you've identified or areas of improvement that were identified?
Absolutely. I can tell you now, like even our definition, like we're having a tier 1 universal team and then having a targeted tier 2 and tier 3. If you go between, so both of our buildings have these teams, but they look differently in each building, and to some degree that's okay. But there's also not, there's some ambiguity about what constitutes tier 2 versus tier 3. And then also, we talk about behavior data, but looking at that in a more systematic way, like already we can tell you like where some of those gaps are. And so now the process of closing them.
And some of it we identified, like tier 2 and tier 3 are being done pretty well for kids who have those needs. But if you look back at tier 1, how are we documenting all the rewards that do acknowledge? So when we do a Hawk Award, are we documenting that as a positive behavior intervention +1? When we do a little thing down at the Husky Note, is that being documented anywhere? When we give out the gold coin for the book vending machine, that's absolutely positive.
PBIS, yeah.
Positive behavior intervention, yep. Are we documenting that? We're not. So that's all data that we do have that we haven't tracked. So, those are the types of things that we should be tightening up, and we certainly could get a better handle on. And then the common language, so I feel like instructional coherence is the theme of the year. So like the language that we're using for zones of regulation in tier 3, it does get up to tier 2, and then some teachers are aware and use it in tier 1, but not everybody. But that's a very simple change that we can make, is having everyone use the zones of regulation language in tier 1 and
Absolutely.
attend a training and learn about it if you don't know about it. So it's not really a tier 1 intervention, but certainly the language could be used. So.
Yeah, I could, just, my frame of reference is Miss Chrissa at HCS. I can absolutely envision her easily doing that through all tiers.
Yeah, and you just think about it from like a capacity lens. So what's really effective and working well for tier 3, like how do we get that across the school capacity-wise in smaller doses? Because you just never know when it's going to be needed. So it's all helpful.
Great.
And Jeff's going to share some information about grants.
Thank you. The Department of Education has announced, well, the legislature had appropriated $5 million for this year and $5 million for next year for ongoing SAFE grants, which are the Security Action for Education grants. The current grant is open to 3 categories. One is access control, second is emergency alerting, and the third is surveillance. I have submitted a total of 5 requests for funding under these grants for both schools. For the central school, I have submitted a request to enhance our existing fencing, which is a little bit low, reconfigure it a bit, and make it a little bit more secure. We have requested updates to our door alarms at both buildings to bring them onto a similar platform, and we have I've submitted a request for bollards here at middle school to delineate and separate the parking lot from that side area where the gym doors are. Some may know it as the DJ area during Play for the Cure, so we want to make sure that no one is able to get past that. It would leave the driveway open, but it would bring it in so that it's limited, and it would make it obvious that it's not a continuation of the driveway. And so, yeah, so that's what we have submitted for, and there's still another month, I believe, until we're going to hear. Oh, and one more was for cameras, to bring the middle school cameras onto the same platform as the central school cameras. So a total of $165,500 of it has been submitted in requests fitting into those 3 categories.
And we've received SAFE grant money before?
I think we've received money every round.
Every round.
I can look around me and around here and tell you what we've received money for, which is great, because it's perfect to discuss this on a budget night, because a lot of this stuff would normally appear in a facilities budget.
Right.
But we're trying to keep it tight. It's good that we know we can rely on at least consideration, some money from the state for that, for those projects.
All right.
And moving on, so as the board is aware, we have a really tremendous program at the Central School called, well, we call it the Grannies program, but it's really called the Friends program. And it is it's sort of a variation of like Teach for America, right? Except sort of on the other end of the continuum for retired people to be able to come into school. The cost of the program is paid through the Department of Health and Human Services. And so we have probably one of the most robust Grannies program, and they were awarded the Spirit of New Hampshire Award.
Awesome.
So congratulations to them. And I think you've heard me say this before, that our grannies are like, they're not just these like really wonderful humans that show up and, you know, are there for kids. Like, they provide intervention, social and emotional support. Like my, the first year that I was here where they were here, they weren't here during the COVID year, it was hard to tell when you're learning who people are, like who's the teacher, because they're just such an integrated part of the classroom. So very, very well deserved. Also, I'm in possession of hundreds, I haven't counted them, but hundreds of cards for our military service people. Excellent. So this is what's called the Holiday Cards for Military Challenge. It's organized by a friend of mine, Dr. Laura Garber of Hollis, who started this program back in 2016 with local schools to have students write cards to active service members for the holidays. And she's collected well over 100,000 cards that get sent, and both the middle school and the central school have participated. I have those cards in my possession, and I am dropping them off tomorrow. So I really appreciate. And I went through and I read just a handful of them, and they're just like, this is just so endearing, as you would expect from our Hampstead students. Also had the opportunity last week, the Rotary came in to meet with third graders. They every year, they annually give them a dictionary. And this is part of their support of literacy. And so we're very grateful for that. The kids were super excited to be able to receive their dictionaries. We also received a donation, the Central School received a donation of a 3D printer. So there was a printer and then also filament as well. And that was from Dan Ryan, who's a parent of an HCS student. Again, in accordance with policy KCD, this doesn't require the board approval, but the board has asked that I let them know when we do get receive donations. And then also, I did have the opportunity to attend the cybersecurity summit through Primex last week. It's just very, very well done. Again, Primex is a partner for us in so many different avenues. They provide great professional development. Most of it is completely free. And so Nicole and Joe and I were able to attend. And as Joe said, like, the sophistication of these cybersecurity attacks is absolutely frightening. They're getting way more sophisticated. This is not like a 20-year-old in their parents' basement trying to, like, you know, break code. These are sophisticated criminal organizations that are doing everything they can to steal student data, because student data is at an absolute premium. It's got a very long shelf life, and you know, I'm very, I feel optimistic. It is kind of scary because we have an amazing team, and they are constantly providing professional development, trying to keep up with all of the different you know, initiatives with cybersecurity, so I appreciate the efforts there. And then lastly, as Nicole said, we had the chance today to participate in instructional rounds. It was the HCS administration and HMS admin, district folks, and we just went through classrooms and observed literacy instruction in grade 2, grade 3, and a grade 4 special education classroom, and then to go back and sit in the conference room and talk about instruction. This is the work that we want to do all the time, but it was nice to be able to to calibrate.
and be able to talk about like what does good instruction look like? What do we expect from our teachers? Where are the pockets of really great innovation, and how do we get them to spread? So I appreciate Tara Lynn for hosting us, and it sounds like we're going to get something cooking for the middle school in a couple weeks, where we'll take a look at math, and we'll continually do these throughout the year. Our new teachers do these as well, so this is something that it was really impressive today. Like, you walk into a classroom and there's 4 of us, and teachers, they don't even blink. And I had asked Tara Lynn, like, did they know we were coming? And like, well, not exactly. We didn't tell them where we were going, because, like, generally speaking, they've gotten used to people coming into their classrooms. In fact, if they were to give feedback, they say, we don't go in enough. And I appreciate that, and they're right. And so this is a way to just stay connected to instruction and to what's going on in the classroom, because that's what matters most. So that's it for the superintendent report. I'll take any questions folks might have.
I'll just say how much I appreciate the Granny program, as you said it. All my kids have benefited from them. They've made amazing connections, and I want them to know the impact that they continue to have. So thank you.
The HR office will be open tomorrow to field complaints from our lovely volunteers about being referred to consistently as grannies.
Grannies, yeah.
All right. Board members, other questions or discussion? Okay. With that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:32 p.m. Thank you.